In this video, we're going to take a look at the synth mode for the Olafur Arnalds Cells library. Now, if you'd like to see more about the settings and the top menu, please see the other video. Likewise with the main preset menu. Starting in the middle of the interface, we have expression, which is a volume control, which operates within the master volume of the library. We then have the dynamics option, which for the synth engine is a little bit different because what happens is it crossfades, as you can see at the bottom of the interface, between sound source A and sound source B. The effects controls can all be configured through a shortcut on the keyboard. But by default, what this is going to show us is the high pass filters, the low pass filters, and also the ADSR attack times for each of the individual sound bays. The shortcut to change any of this, so for example, if I wanted to put the LFO of the pitch onto the effects knob at the top, I hold down Control and Option or Alt and click that particular control. So for example, now I can assign to knob slot 1, and I've now got the pitch LFO on the knob at the top. So moving down the interface, we have two different preset browsers. This is for sound bay A and sound bay B. So I can load a different sound into the left hand side to the right hand side, and every single control on the left and right is identical and unique to that sound source. So on the left hand side, here we can see a whole host of different filters. So for example, I can filter here by the type of sound, so for example synth, and then I can choose the genre of that sound. So for example, I want it to be dark, and here I can see some dark presets. I can then click and load. We can remove a sound here by using the X toggle. Or once it's loaded, we can use the little preset arrows to go up and down that preset menu. And again, this happens within the filter system that you have selected. The speaker icon will mute that particular sound, but not unload it. The little arrow in the top will allow you to change the preset between sound bay A and sound bay B. So if you wanted to apply different controls to the B sound that is different to the A sound, you can just swap that over. Moving down, we have the low frequency oscillator section, which is where we can modulate the sound via volume or amplitude. So we can change that by clicking and dragging in the box, and the amount that it affects the sound is controlled by the slider on the right hand side. This is the same for the pitch and also the filtering. Moving down again, we have a high pass and a low pass filter. And then below each of these graphs, we have the resonance of that filter. So this is the point in which the frequency will be boosted before the drop-off starts. To the right of the filtering, we have the ADSR, so this stands for Attack, Decay, Sustain and Release. The attack control sets how long it takes for that sound to fade in from when you press the key. The decay is how long it takes for the sound to decay down to the sustain level, which is a volume set via this S control. The release is how long it takes for the sound to fade out to zero, having let go of the key. We then have a tuning control, which allows you to change the pitch of that particular sound bay. A panning control, which allows us to change the pan in the stereo field of that sound bay. We then have the offset, which enables us to change the position on the keyboard for that particular sound bay. So as you can see at the bottom, the white keys are moving as I change this. We then have a trim control, which is just a generic volume if we need some additional level on that sound bay versus the sound bay on the other side. We then have the glide and bend controls. So when this is enabled by ticking the box on the right, by setting this, it's going to set a time for how long it will take the sound to reach the target note that you have played. The bend controls are only available when glide is not available. And what happens is the slider on the left hand side will allow you to set the amount in which the sound will pitch bend, and then the slider on the right will affect how audible that particular bend is. We then have the clone controls, which is where we can duplicate the sound by pitching it, and then we have a fine offset for that as well. The oscillate mixer button on the left hand side will allow us to set the mixer in the middle to oscillate depending on our host tempo. Stop on release will mean that when we hit stop in our transport, in our DAW, the oscillating will stop. To the right we have the speed in which the oscillation happens, and then the controls on the left and right determine how much oscillation to the sound bay A or B happens. The wavetables on the right hand side are the shape in which the oscillation happens, so how smooth it is or how jagged it is, depending on the wavetable that you have selected. Now moving into the middle, so we have these three different controls here. So the middle option shows us all the effects that are available to us and at which point in the synth signal chain they're available to us. So on the left hand side we have the ability to set which part of the signal chain. So Bay A effects and Bay B effects, you can think of these as inserts on just Bay A, or alternatively Bay B. So these are going to be things such as like distortion or some flanging perhaps. And then when we click on Bay B, we can see that there's also some different effects here, such as the notch filtering. So this might be another reason as to why we want to use this reverse toggle here, is because we can then apply some different effects to the different sound sources. For each effect to be heard, we have to enable it, and then we also have to set the controls in particular. Now the inserts for Bay A and Bay B both have the aux option, which is where we can send signal to more generic send bass effects such as reverb and delay. Now the aux effects can be clicked and selected by clicking the aux effects button, and here is where we can set all the controls for the aux effects, such as the pre-delay time for reverb. Again, these all need to be turned on in order to be heard. Now the master effects are the effects that can be heard over the whole global sound, so effectively the mix bus effects. So here we'll have like a generic EQ, there'll be a grain delay, some tape saturation, a limiter, but also here if we wanted to we could use the auxiliary effects again, so we could send some reverb over the whole of the sound at the end if we wanted as well, for example. To the right we have a gate sequencer. So this is where we can set a rhythmic element to the sound. So if we enable the gate sequencer at the top, we can then click in the boxes to set different rhythms depending on the sound bay. The speed at which the gate sequencer operates is on the left hand side. And then if we wanted to reverse the pattern between A and B, we can click the reverse button on the right hand side. The length will give us the ability to make the sequence quite long or quite short. The depth is going to be how much of the sound is affected by the gate sequencer, so how aggressive it chops in and chops out. That can then be smoothed by the smooth in and out control, so effectively this is like a fade in on each of the little steps. We then have the stop on release, which is when the sequencer will stop when we hit stop in your DAW. And we then have the after layer effects. So this will say when it's enabled, I want this sequencer to happen after this effect stage. If you have any further questions about the synth engine, please get in touch with us at spitfireaudio.com/support.
Thanks for watching Spitfire Clips. Let us know if it was too long, too short, too fast, or too slow in the comments down below. Hit like if we answered your question, and subscribe for more clips, tips, tricks, and exclusive Spitfire content.